There is something happening in your backyard right now that most people will never fully understand. Not because it's hidden, not because it's rare, but because we've trained ourselves to look past it, to see birds as background noise, as decoration, as nature doing what nature does. We watch them land on a branch, peck at a feeder, disappear into the sky, and we think nothing of it. But here's what nobody tells you. They are watching you back. And they have been for longer than you realize. Think about the last time a bird landed close to you. Not flew past, not disappeared into a tree, actually landed, within arm's reach, and just stayed there. For a moment that felt slightly too long to be accidental. Most people dismiss that moment, file it away under coincidence, random behavior, biology with no meaning attached. But what if that's exactly the wrong conclusion? What if that moment was, in some deeply strange and verifiable way, intentional? What researchers have been quietly discovering over the past 2 decades doesn't just challenge what we think about birds. It challenges what we think about loneliness, about connection, about what it means to be recognized by another living thing. And the most unsettling part? It's been happening to you, your entire life. There's a specific kind of morning that bird watchers describe. You've probably had one without realizing what it was. You step outside, coffee in hand, mind still half asleep, and the yard feels different. Not visually, not dramatically, but something in the quality of the air shifts, and then you hear it. A single bird calling from somewhere close. Not alarmed, not random, something that feels almost like acknowledgement. Ornithologists once would have told you that was projection, anthropomorphization. The human mind doing what the human mind does. Finding patterns, finding meaning, finding faces in everything. But the science has quietly, steadily moved in a different direction. In 2011, researchers at the University of Washington published findings that would have seemed absurd 30 years earlier. They discovered that American crows, the ones in your neighborhood, the ones you've probably ignored 1,000 times, can not only recognize individual human faces, they hold grudges. They remember specific people who threatened them, and they teach that memory to their children. Let that sit for a moment. A bird in your yard may know your face, may have known it for years, may have already decided what kind of person you are. The question that nobody seems to ask is this: if a crow can remember your face for years, through molts, through winters, through the deaths of flock members, what else are they carrying? What else have the birds in your backyard silently cataloged about your life? Researchers who study corvid behavior describe something that sounds almost cinematic. When a crow that has formed a positive association with a particular human dies, other crows in the area, crows that watched that relationship, begin approaching that same human with reduced wariness, as if the trust was somehow passed on. A network of perception, running parallel to your life, invisible to you, built on the evidence of your daily behavior. And crows aren't even the most intimate part of this story. Consider the chickadee, small, unremarkable looking, the kind of bird people describe as cute without giving it another thought. But inside that tiny skull is a hippocampus that physically expands and contracts with the seasons, growing new neurons in autumn to store thousands of cache locations, then pruning them back in spring. A brain that literally rewires itself. Twice a year, the bird returning to your feeder every morning remembers far more about you than most people realize. It remembers where you stand. It remembers how you move. It has categorized your presence as either safe or threatening, and that categorization shapes every decision it makes in your yard. Now here's the part that changes how this all feels. Studies on hand-feeding wild chickadees show that the birds don't just accept food from unfamiliar hands and walk away. Over time, sometimes weeks, sometimes just days, they begin to show something that researchers carefully describe as preference. They return to specific individuals. They land on the same hands. They wait. What is that if not a relationship? The word relationship is where scientists get nervous. It carries emotional weight that researchers are trained to strip away. but the data keeps pushing back against the clinical language. There's a phenomenon documented in backyard bird populations that doesn't have a clean scientific name yet, though it probably should. When a person who regularly feeds a local bird population stops appearing, due to illness, travel, or death, the feeding behavior of the birds changes. They return to the usual spot. They wait. Some species have been documented returning for weeks to a location where food has stopped appearing entirely. This isn't learned helplessness. These are wild birds with full access to natural food sources. They're not starving. They're returning to a place, to the memory of a presence. What are they waiting for? The honest answer is that we don't fully know. And somehow that mystery feels more profound than any explanation could. There's a woman in the UK named Gabby Mann who, as a child, began leaving food scraps for the crows in her neighborhood. What happened next became one of the most quietly astonishing documented examples of interspecies exchange ever recorded. The crows began bringing her gifts, small objects, buttons, glass beads, a broken earring, a small piece of metal shaped almost like a heart. Researchers studying the case were careful. They noted that corvids do cache objects, that they engage in object exchange behaviors. But Gabby wasn't giving them objects. She was giving them food. And they were giving her things they had found. The exchange was asymmetrical in a way that defies simple behavioral explanation. They weren't trading. They were offering. One of the gifts was a lens cap that Gabby's mother had lost in the yard months earlier. The crows brought it back. Think about what that requires. A crow had to observe the cap, had to watch it be lost, had to carry the memory of its existence through weeks or months, and then had to decide, in whatever way a crow decides anything, that returning it mattered. Something is happening in the space between humans and birds that our language is barely equipped to describe. Here's what the neuroscience adds to this. The human nervous system responds to birdsong in ways that are measurably distinct from how it responds to other ambient sounds. A 2022 study from King's College London found that listening to birdsong significantly reduced anxiety and paranoia in participants, effects that lasted hours after the birds stopped singing. But the more interesting finding wasn't just that birdsong was calming. It was which sounds triggered the effect. Songs associated with high bird diversity, the sound of a yard or woodland full of many species, produced stronger responses than single-species recordings. Your nervous system, it turns out, is reading the birds around you as environmental data. A rich bird chorus signals safety. Silence, or worse, sudden silence, signals threat. This is an ancient system. This has been running in the background of human consciousness for hundreds of thousands of years. You are not just enjoying birdsong, you are using it. Your body is extracting survival information from those sounds every single morning without telling you. The birds in your yard are not decoration, they are part of your threat assessment system. They always have been. And this is where the story becomes something else entirely. Because if your nervous system has been wired, since the beginning of human existence, to read birds as environmental signals, as indicators of safety, of danger, of the health of a place, then our relationship with them isn't incidental. It isn't sentimental, it's structural. We didn't domesticate birds the way we domesticated dogs. We didn't own them, breed them, shape them. Instead, something stranger happened. We co-evolved with them. We built environments they moved into. They shaped the way we experience our own spaces. They taught us, without intending to, what safety sounds like. The bird that lands near you in the morning quiet isn't just a visitor. In some deeply biological sense, it's been a presence in human life longer than cities, longer than agriculture, longer than language. There is a particular quality of grief that people report when a bird they know stops appearing. It surprises people, the intensity of it. Someone will feed a specific robin for 3 seasons, watch it through a window every morning, learn its habits without realizing they're doing so. And then the bird doesn't come back. And the absence feels different than they expected. People are sometimes embarrassed by this grief. It feels disproportionate. Foolish even. A bird. Just a bird. But that grief is not foolish. That grief is evidence. It's evidence that a real relationship existed, asymmetric, wordless, conducted through presence and routine and small acts of provision, but real. Recognized by the nervous system as loss, filed by the emotional brain as absence. We don't have the language for what these relationships are. We only have the feelings they leave behind. There's a philosopher named Robin Wall Kimmerer, a botanist actually, who writes about the concept of what she calls reciprocal recognition. The idea that paying attention to another living being is itself a form of relationship. That to be truly seen by something that doesn't share your language or your world is one of the rarest and most meaningful experiences available to a conscious creature. The crow that recognizes your face, the chickadee that lands on your hand, the robin that sings from the same branch every morning when you appear in the yard. They are not ignoring you. They have never been ignoring you. They have been watching you the way you have, quietly without admitting it, been watching them. And now we arrive at something that's almost too strange to say directly. Across every human culture, in every recorded period of history, birds appear in our stories as messengers, as symbols of the soul, as creatures that exist in the boundary between the visible world and something else, something we can't name. Almost every tradition on Earth, independently, arrived at the same symbolic association. You could dismiss that as mythology, as primitive minds seeking pattern. Or you could recognize it as something else, as evidence of a relationship so old, so embedded in human experience that it generated meaning in every mind that ever tried to make sense of it. We have been telling bird stories since before we had writing to record them. The birds kept showing up, in our yards, in our grief, in our moments of unexpected stillness, and we kept trying to explain why they felt like more than they appeared to be. Maybe the answer isn't that we were wrong to feel that way. Maybe the answer is that we were right, and we just didn't have the science yet to tell us so. There is a moment that happens in the lives of people who spend time with birds, who feed them, watch them, sit near them with enough patience and enough stillness where the relationship shifts. It's hard to describe precisely. It happens quietly. You stop being a person standing in a yard, and you start being a presence that belongs there. The birds reorganize around you differently. They don't flee at the same distances. They sing closer. They land within sight. You have been accepted into something, not as a member of their flock, not as anything with a name, but as a recognized, benign, known element of their world. In that moment, if you're paying attention, if you let yourself feel what it actually is, something in you responds, something old and largely dormant. The recognition travels in both directions, and whatever it is not nothing. Step outside tomorrow morning, before the phone, before the noise. Just stand there for a moment and listen, not for anything in particular. Just listen to what's already happening around you, to the sound of a world that has been quietly, persistently paying attention to your life. The yard you think of as yours has always been shared. The birds you've walked past 1,000 times have been building a file on you. Your routines, your temperament, your reliability, in whatever way birds build files. And somewhere in the branches, in the shadows of the ordinary, something with a beating heart and a memory and a recognition system finely tuned to everything you do is watching you step outside. It already knows your face. It has already decided something about you. The only question that matters now is, what have you decided about it? Has a bird ever done something that stopped you completely? A moment that felt too precise to be random, too persistent to be coincidence? I want to hear it. Tell me what happened in your yard.